My wife secretly swapped our embryos. So I swapped our entire life without her knowing. I used to believe my marriage was unshakable. My name is Daniel, 32M, and for the past 5 years, I had built a life with my wife, Sophia, 31F. On the surface, we had everything: a comfortable home, stable careers, and a relationship that appeared perfect to the outside world. But reality was far from that. For 2 years, we struggled to conceive. It started with hope, then came the disappointments, the negative tests, the nights of silence where neither of us spoke, just waiting for the next cycle, the next appointment, the next failure, and eventually, the desperation. I still remember the tremor in her voice the night she suggested IVF. "It's our best chance," she whispered, eyes filled with hope. I agreed immediately. I didn't question anything, because back then, I truly believed we were in this together. Sophia took charge of the entire process, and I thought nothing of it. "You're already stressed with work, babe. Let me handle the appointments. It's just routine stuff. You don't need to be there for every step. The clinic will call you if anything important comes up." And I trusted her. The day of the embryo transfer, I sat beside her, holding her hand as the doctor explained procedure. It was supposed to be our moment, the beginning of something beautiful. But now I realize that was the moment she erased me. Months passed. Her belly grew, and so did my excitement. Then, one evening, while sorting through routine medical paperwork, checking insurance details, making sure everything was in order, I saw it. A sperm donor ID. Not my name, not my case number. A completely different identification code. At first, my brain refused to accept it. I double-checked, cross-referenced it with my own records. It didn't match. My stomach dropped. I told myself it had to be a mistake, a clerical error. There was no way, absolutely no way. This was real. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. I wasn't paranoid, but I needed to be sure. The next morning, I went straight to the IVF clinic. From the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. I approached the front desk, keeping my voice calm, controlled. I just needed answers. "Hi, I was reviewing some paperwork for my wife's treatment and noticed something strange. Can you confirm which embryo was used for our procedure?" The receptionist smiled, completely unaware of the storm she was about to unleash. "Sure, let me pull that up for you," she typed. I waited. Then I saw her expression change, her brows furrowed in confusion. "That's odd," she murmured. "It looks like the embryo used wasn't the one originally assigned to your case." My heart stopped. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, glancing at the screen again. "It appears a donor specimen was used instead, but that should have required your signed consent." I stared at her. "I never signed anything." She blinked, then looked down at the file again. "Oh, it says here that your wife authorized a change." Everything inside me turned ice cold. "So you just swapped embryos without verifying with me?" Her face paled. "Aye," she swallowed. "That's not supposed to happen. We have strict policies to prevent that." Then explain how it did. I could feel the pressure building behind my eyes. The kind of rage that comes when you realize your entire life has been ripped away in an instant. She fumbled for words. I don't know. This shouldn't have been possible. Let me speak to my supervisor. We need to investigate why you weren't consulted." I didn't wait. I turned on my heel and stormed out. I needed to see her. Now, by the time I got home, my hands were shaking. I slammed the front door open, my footsteps heavy as I approached. And then, the moment everything changed. I stepped inside, and there she was, curled up on the couch, her body trembling as she wiped at her tear-streaked face. She already knew. Her skin was blotchy, her hand shaking, her breathing uneven. I hadn't even shut the door before she choked out, "You went to the IVF center." It wasn't a question. I didn't respond. I just stood there, staring at her. She swallowed hard, her gaze flickering up to meet mine, swollen eyes filled with fear. "My friend works there," she whispered. "She told me you came in. She said you were arguing with them." My jaw tightened so hard it ached. "Is that the same friend who helped you switch embryos?" She sucked in a breath, her entire body flinching. That was it. That was all the confirmation I needed. She knew. She had always known exactly what she did. And now, I was about to hear the excuses. My voice came out low, cold. Why? She hiccuped, rubbing at her face like she could somehow erase the guilt. You wouldn't understand. A pause. Then, finally, the truth began to spill out. I wanted the best for our baby, she stammered. I wanted strong genes, healthy genes. Meaning, my voice was dead, void of emotion. She hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, I use my exes. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Unforgiving. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. The words barely registered. But she kept going, her voice unsteady, desperate. He's tall, strong, athletic, no family history of illness. I just thought our child deserved the best chance in life. A breath left my lips. And then I laughed, a dark, bitter, humorless sound. Because this wasn't just betrayal. This was insanity. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the woman I once thought I knew. I don't remember walking away. But I do remember one thing. The cold, solid thought that settled deep inside me as I stepped out the door. This wasn't going to end with a simple divorce. No, that would be far too easy. I wasn't just going to leave her. I was going to erase her. Because she didn't just take my child away. She stole my entire future. And I was going to make sure she lost hers, too. The beginning of the end. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and lay in silence, staring at the ceiling. The rage hadn't fully hit me yet. Not the kind that makes you break things, scream, or lash out. No, this was something different. Something colder. Because Sophia hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had engineered my removal from my own child's life. And she thought I would never find out. But I had. Now, I had a choice. Confront her immediately or let her believe she had won. Right until the moment I took everything from her. I chose the second option. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. If I leave her now, what happens? I asked. She skimmed my case file, brow furrowing. Legally, you're presumed a father unless you challenge paternity in court. If you don't contest it quickly, you could still be held responsible for child support, regardless of biology. A lump formed in my throat. She had almost trapped me permanently. What if I proved she committed fraud? My lawyer sat back, tapping her pen against the desk. That changes everything. If we can establish intent, that she deliberately deceived you, you won't be financially liable. But we need solid proof. The fertility clinic's documentation will help, but ideally, we need a recorded admission. I nodded. And what about our assets? You need to move them immediately. If she files first, she can claim an even split. I had work to do. For weeks, I played my part. I went home. I smiled. I pretended. And all the while, I was silently dismantling everything she had built. I drained our shared accounts, moved my assets, legally separated the house from her claim. I gathered evidence. I met with fertility clinic's director, who confirmed that Sophia had personally authorized the embryo switch. When I requested an investigation into how this was allowed without my consent, they found the answer. Her friend had bypassed verification protocols. She was fired immediately. Then I got my confession. I let Sophia think I hadn't figured everything out yet. I asked small, calculated questions about her ex, about the clinic. She let things slip. Tiny inconsistencies, minor details that didn't add up. And when I had enough, I filed a formal dispute with the fertility clinic, ensuring there was a permanent, undeniable record. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about making sure she lost everything, just like she had done to me. The final strike. I coordinated with my attorney to contest paternity the moment I filed for divorce. At the same time, I arranged a private meeting with her ex, the real father of the child. Everything was in motion because I wasn't just walking away. I was making sure she had nothing left. The day of the reckoning. I arrived home earlier than usual. Sophia was in the nursery, humming softly as she folded tiny baby clothes. She looked serene, content, like a woman who had everything she had ever wanted. She turned, smiling warmly. "You're home early." She approached me, pressing a soft kiss to my lips. I let her believe, just for a few more moments, that her world was still intact. Then I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a manila envelope, and placed on the dresser. Her smile faltered. "What's this?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Open it." She hesitated before sliding out the documents inside. Divorce papers. An official notice from my lawyer terminating all financial support. Her eyes skimmed the first few lines, her breath catching her throat. Panic flickered across her face. What is this?" "Exactly what you deserve." Her hands shook as she flipped through the pages, scanning for something, anything, that would give her a foothold. But she found nothing. Her name wasn't on any major assets. The house? Mine. The savings? Gone. Transferred out months ago. Every shared financial connection? Dissolved. Her body went rigid, fingers gripping the papers so tightly her knuckles turned white. You planned this." I met her gaze and smiled. "Of course I did." Her breathing grew shallow. Desperate. "Daniel, please, we can fix this." "Fix what?" I cut in, my voice eerily calm. "You never wanted me. You wanted my name, my money, my life. You made that clear when you replaced our child with someone else's." Her face twisted in desperation, panic setting in. But the baby." I held her gaze. "Not mine." The air between us thickened, suffocating. Sophia trembled, her chest rising and falling unevenly. "You can't just walk away from us." Her voice was barely above a whisper. I turned toward the door. "Watch me." Behind me, a broken sob escaped her lips. The first of many. The courtroom showdown. The courtroom was silent. The only sounds were the shuffle of paperwork, the occasional whisper of attorneys conferring with their clients. I sat at my table, composed, unwavering. Sophia sat across from me, tense, hands gripping the table as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. She knew she was losing. Yet she still believed she could talk her way out of this. She thought her tears, her usual performances, would sway the court. She was wrong, because this time there was nothing left to manipulate. Everything was documented. Everything was laid out in black and white. The fertility clinic report, the financial transfers, the written statements confirming that the embryo switch was intentional. This wasn't a debate. It was an execution. The judge flipped through the documents, adjusting her glasses. Then she turned to Sophia's attorney. "Mrs. Carter, does your client have any objections to the evidence presented?" Her lawyer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably before shaking his head. "No, Your Honor." The judge's gaze landed on Sophia. "Then let's address the financial resolution. Given the proven deception, Mr. Carter's assets remain his sole property. Mrs. Carter is not entitled to any financial compensation from this divorce." Sophia's head snapped up in shock. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously in her ear, but it didn't matter. The judge continued, her tone firm, final. "Furthermore, since Mr. Carter is not the biological father, the court recognizes his right to sever all legal and financial obligations toward the child. He will not be responsible for child support." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. Sophia's lawyer quickly stood. "Your Honor, my client requests consideration for emotional distress due to the dissolution of the marriage. She was under extreme stress and—" The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "Enough." Her voice was sharp, decisive. Mrs. Carter knowingly deceived her husband, manipulated medical procedures without his consent, and falsified financial statements. There will be no additional compensation awarded. She tapped her gavel once. "This court rules in favor of the petitioner, Daniel Carter. Case closed." Just like that, it was over. Sophia sat frozen, staring blankly ahead. Her lawyer silently closed his briefcase. I rose, buttoned my suit jacket, and walked out. Freedom. Outside the courthouse. I inhaled deeply. The air felt lighter. Freer. I pulled out my phone, blocked her number, and erased every last trace of her from my life. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had already won.